Hi, this is Herb Shapiro with the Dr. Vax channel. I'm very excited today to be reviewing a new printer from Monoprice, the Monoprice Cadet. It's a $250 printer. It's tiny. It has a 100 millimeter square print volume, cubic print volume, 100 by 100 by 100. And you might ask, where's that fit? For people new to 3D printing, I've been recommending two printers most recently. If you're handy, if you like putting things together, if you're willing to fidget a bit, there is a wonderful printer, the Creality Ender 3 Pro, that delivers a lot of value. And it has a relatively large print volume. If you're not handy, if you want to take a printer out of the box and just use it, I've been recommending the Monoprice Select Mini. The Select Mini is about 125 millimeters cubic print volume. And I think it's an outstanding printer that's very, very easy to use. So where does this Monoprice Cadet, a 100 millimeter cubic volume printer, fit into the mix? And do I recommend you buy this? And who should buy this? Now, in full disclosure, I didn't pay for this printer. I did pay for the Mini Select. I did pay for my Creality printers, but this one was provided to me by Monoprice so that I would do a review. So stay tuned and let's learn something together. Now, what excites me the most about this printer is its roots, its heritage. It's actually made by a company that also makes one of my favorite Monoprice printers. That's the Ultimate 2. And the company is WeDo. On the WeDo website, this is called the Tina 2. I'll show you a picture. And what's interesting about both the Monoprice website and the WeDo website is the positioning of this printer. This is positioned as a printer that you might use with children in an educational setting, in a school, in a library, at home. And as we go through the features on this printer, we'll see that there were conscious decisions about features specifically to make it more appropriate to use with children. Now, filament-based 3D printers have hot ends that get up to 250 degrees Celsius. You need to be careful. They're moving parts. You need to be careful. But I believe the trade-offs that were made by WeDo and in the private branded version by Monoprice, the Cadet, are really thoughtful. So we're going to go through and talk about those trade-offs as we look at the features of this printer. Okay, let's look at this together. First, it's a very rigid plastic case. Now, it's all plastic. The Monoprice Mini Select is all metal and is quite a bit heavier, but actually doesn't feel as refined, as solid as this printer. This feels like an appliance you would have on your kitchen counter. And in fact, if you have a little bit of ventilation in your kitchen, an exhaust fan, you can open a window. This is probably a very appropriate appliance to use in your kitchen with your kids. The second thing that's interesting is you can see here, and I'll show you a close-up, there's a guard in front of the hot end. You'd have to work pretty hard to touch the nozzle. Now, that guard has a plus and a minus. It means a much more child-friendly device. It also means replacing the nozzle on this printer is a bit trickier. But they've offset that with a removable hot end assembly. So you loosen two Allen screws and you can actually pull the whole hot end down. To loosen those Allen screws, you do have to stick a tool through this grill. Not too terrible. Very interesting trade-off. The next trade-off is there's no heated bed. Now, you might think that was done just to save costs. You find a lot of the least expensive, kid-friendly printers, printers that sell for 150 bucks or so. You get them online, and they don't have heated print beds. In this case, I don't think it was done to save cost. I think it was a conscious decision to make this more child-friendly. And the print surface on this printer is very easy to get to. Oops, let's take our print sample off. And it's flexible. Now, on top of it is something that looks like a sheet of masking tape. My guess is you could use regular masking tape. They do provide you a couple extra sheets like this, and I assume they'll be available for purchase inexpensively. And at first, I said, this is going to be a problem. There's no heated bed. I've never used a printer without a heated bed. Are my prints going to stick? I have not had a single print fail. Now, I think that's partially because I don't know what type of masking tape this is exactly, but it works really well. It's partially because this printer is only recommended to print with PLA on the Monoprice website. Now, on the WeDo website, they recommend PLA or TPU. But in addition, every print by default in the slicer is set to use a raft. Now, a raft is a surface under the print that is large and flat, and it actually peels off quite easily. So here's a calibration cat. We'll look at this in more detail later. But let me just show you how easy it is to pull the raft off the bottom. This works so well that I may start lowering the temperature of my print beds in order to create a cooler ambient environment and printing with rafts going forward. Now, the only disadvantage of printing with a raft is it does add a bit of time to the print. Which takes us to the next feature. This printer has both power fail recovery and the ability to actually go into the front panel and tell it to stop, pause a print, stop a print. You can turn the printer completely off. You can go home for the night. You can go out for dinner. You can come back, you can tell it to start, and it'll start right where it left off. Now, I haven't tried that yet, and I'd be a little bit concerned about layer adhesion when you do that, but it is another very interesting feature. Overall, the knob that's used to control the front panel and the LCD are well done. They're simple, they're basic, but there are interesting features, once again, in the software in the printer. You load the filament the same way you would on most Bowden tube printers. You push it up through here till it gets about to the hot end, but then there's a feature on the front end to finish the loading that will automatically extrude some filament, and you press it when it's done, it asks you if you want more, etc. In addition, there's a feature to retract the filament, to pull it out of the hot end. Both things that make it a little easier for somebody new to 3D printing. The printer does come with Wi-Fi support, but it's a little bit tricky. In order to set up the Wi-Fi, you really need an Android tablet. Now, there's a copy of the Polo Print application, which you use with this printer, available for both Android and iOS. The iOS version is a beta version that you have to run under test flight on iOS, and I couldn't get the Wi-Fi configuration feature to work. It did work without difficulty on this inexpensive Digiland. I don't even remember where I bought this. This was a less than $100 Android tablet that did work without problem. Now, once you have the Wi-Fi configured, though, it doesn't quite do as much as I would like. From a tablet, and I'll show you some examples of this in a moment, you can print things, start prints for prints that are on your SD card. The SD card is right here, and nicely done. It actually sticks out enough so it's easy to get in and out. That's one of my complaints about the Monoprice Select Mini. The SD card is very hard to get in and out. Or you can print cloud prints. Cloud prints are a library. There are about 20 prints, sort of standard fun things to print with kids. This fish is an example. You can print cloud prints directly from the app. I'd love the ability to be able to print anything I have in one of my cloud directories, in Google Cloud or in iCloud or in the Microsoft Cloud, or that I can upload to my tablet directly or email to my tablet. I'd love the ability to print those, but that capability isn't there yet. In addition, the Wi-Fi can be used with their proprietary slicer, but their slicer only runs on Windows. I'm sort of an Apple guy, so that bugs me a bit. I did dig out my Surface Go tablet so that I could try their software, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Finally, two more features. First, there's auto bed leveling. Now, auto bed leveling on very low-end printers has been hit and miss in my experience. This one really works. It worked perfectly. As I said, I've had no problem with any print sticking to this print bed. And the base, the bottoms of the print, you can see the bottom of this raft, they're like perfect. So the auto bed leveling works very, very well on this printer. And finally, we're going to look at quality. The quality is outstanding. Now, let's take a step back and look at what you get when you open the box. Well, this printer comes fully assembled. It does have a separate power supply. It's interesting. I'd rather this power cord plugged in down low than up on the top, but the electronics is actually all mounted right here on the top of this printer. There is a power switch on this printer right here. And the only thing you really need to do to assemble it is take out all of the foam that's stuck inside. And to do that, you will have to reach inside and turn this Z-axis rod in order to move the print bed up a little bit so you can get the foam out from underneath. And then this Bowden tube here, there's filament running through it, so I can't take it out. But this Bowden tube is stuck inside. You just pull it out and then you stick it into this coupler here. That's all assembly consists of. Now, I've done one extra thing. This is the filament holder on this printer, and it is only suitable for small reels of filament. I don't have very many of these. So I did go onto Amazon, and for 10 bucks, I purchased a filament reel. It'd be nice if something like this was included in the box. Can't be very expensive, so that you could either use this filament holder or you could use an external filament holder. Then, to print your first print, you go to the front panel. Using these panel controls are very, very obvious. They're very standard. You select print from SD card, and the first thing I printed was this dragon on the SD card. Now let's look at a picture of this in detail. This is a beautiful print. You'd expect it to be a beautiful print because it's on the SD card, but it's really a beautiful print. The other thing I noticed is I haven't done timing tests. This printer appears to move quite fast. Because it's going quite fast, and let's look at a short video here, you'll see it's also quite noisy. It averages between about 57 and 63 dB, which is quite noisy for such a little printer. So it does move quite fast. But in spite of the speed, I believe because it's such a rigid case here, the quality is really very good. And on this print, I see no banding, no layer shifts. It's almost hard to see the layers. So this is a beautiful print. Then I decided to slice some of my own prints. Now they give you two choices. The first, and you'll see a picture of this here, is Y Builder, W-I-I Builder. Y Builder is a product, a software product from WeDo. It's the same slicer variant that's shipped with the Ultimate 2 from Monoprice. And it's okay. It looks like it was based on a Cura 3.x slicing engine. But as you can see on the screen here, and here's a screen with a Benji loaded, here's another screen after it's sliced, the graphics are sort of blurry. They're not really, really sharp. Now, it could be my Surface Go. This is not a high-end Windows machine, but it wasn't great. They do have, however, full access to the Cura, both basic and advanced features, and it's tuned very, very well for this printer. So one of the next things I printed was this calibration cat, and other than a little bit of stringing on the bottom, it's just about perfect. But as importantly, when I take and I put a micrometer on it, a caliper on it, and I check it out, it's really close. Slightly under extruded, but it's really a beautiful print. And the details on the front are perfect. Now, in addition to being able to slice with WeBuilder, as you can see on the screen here, there's also the ability, once you slice, to send your prints over Wi-Fi, which is very, very convenient. Now, the other alternative is to slice a print in Cura. And this really was surprising. This was a wonderful surprise. They shipped Cura 4.3 with an embedded profile for this printer on the SD card. And they do give you, here we go, they give you a little SD card reader that you can use to load it into your machine. It worked great. I sliced this Kickstarter calibration print with that, and I will tell you that with the exception of a bit of stringing, this is one of the best calibration prints I've ever printed from a printer, including printers costing 4 times as much as this printer. So I loaded Cura with their settings, and I went ahead and printed this. The detail you can see on the numbers on the front is excellent. Very, very little ghosting. The bridging is perfect. And the towers are pretty darn good. I've been able to print better towers on high-end printers that were tuned precisely, but pretty darn good. Overall, this is really an outstanding print. The dimensional integrity, the tolerances are really quite good. All of the pins came out. So another just beautiful print. Surprised at how good this is for an entry-level printer. Now, I have a hypothesis about that, because the Monoprice Mini Select is also pretty good. The Ender 3s are pretty good. As I've gone to larger printers, print quality has declined, in particular if they're Bowden tube style printers. So the larger printers that I have that give me the best print quality are direct extruder printers. And I believe the reason is that as this Bowden tube gets longer, retraction becomes more and more difficult with a Bowden tube printer. But when you have a very short Bowden tube like this printer here, or the Monoprice Select Mini, then in fact, retraction is less of an issue. I think that's also why you can print TPU on these small printers successfully. Yet if you try to print TPU with a traditional extruder on many of the larger printers, let's say the Ender 5 as it comes out of the box, it's tricky to do. I had to make a number of upgrades to my Ender 5 to print TPU. So very, very good quality. Then I went to the application. You can see a picture of the various screens. This is running on iOS. I selected the fish. I clicked print. Another nice print. Another very, very nice print. The tablet with these built-in prints, these built-in models, be a really nice way to introduce kids to this printer. What I'd love to see is some integration to Tinkercad or Thingiverse or larger repositories, or the ability to build things yourself. Today, to use those with this printer, I would have to go, let's say, into Tinkercad, build a model, save it, slice it on my desktop, load it to an SD card, and put it into the printer. Now, not a terrible process, and if I had a Windows machine, which is not my everyday machine, I actually could go into WeBuilder and load it from there. But overall, the quality on this printer is remarkable. Now, I decided to really push the limits. So I sliced this Eiffel Tower in Cura. Now I had to scale it down to 80%, which sort of messed up some of the dimensions a little bit. And it's hard to see, but there are extremely fine details here. I printed this at 0.15 millimeter layer heights. Standard speed, I left everything else the same with no support. Yes, believe it or not, this print printed with no supports. Now, some of the bridging is a little bit, the overhangs down here are a little bit ugly. And clearly the supports would have helped this. And there's a little stringing in here, but this is quite remarkable. So in addition to being a printer that's just designed to be kid-friendly, it's also probably an excellent printer to use with miniatures. Now, why do I think that's the case? Well, when I look at the hot end in this printer, the removable hot end, it looks awful familiar to me. So I have a $540 Ultimate 2, which is also a WeDo printer. It's a direct extruder printer. It's a much higher end printer. It's fully enclosed, but it looks like the hot end might be shared between these two printers. I'm not sure it's exactly the same, but clearly they made, once again, interesting trade-offs. They made this relatively safe, pretty much as safe as you could be without fully enclosing it. And fully enclosing a printer designed for PLA is a problem because they tend to overheat and the circulation of air is not good. And then you get various types of cooling problems with prints drooping. It's extremely easy to move around. Now, I've taken other printers, in particular an Ender 3, to my granddaughter's class in order to demonstrate 3D printing. It was a schlep. That's a technical term. It was a schlep. It was a lot of work to pick it up and move it, and then I had to worry about whether the print bed was level. With this little printer, since it's auto bed leveling, it's easy to move around. So let me go through my conclusions, and I'll put these up on the screen so you can see them with me. Number one, print quality is excellent. Number two, I think they made intelligent trade-offs about making this kid appropriate, child appropriate. Once again, you need good ventilation. Things still get hot. It needs to be supervised. But I think they made very good trade-offs. Number three, it's just easy to use. The front panel is easy to use. It's easy to get the SD cards in and out. WeBuilder is not my favorite slicer, but it does connect via Wi-Fi. With additional work on Polo Print, I think it could be very interesting to be able to print from tablets, things that you create in other environments. Wi-Fi is a really important feature because it's built into the printer with just software work, either third-party or from WeDo or Monoprice. This printer, the Cadet, will become an even stronger printer. Now, what are the disadvantages? This is really a PLA-only printer. Maybe PLA and TPU. There is no heated print bed, so anything that's going to warp, you really can't use on this printer. As I shared, I learned about the power of rafts, and at least on this printer, they work great. Number two, it's small. This is about the largest print you're going to print on this printer. Now, for an exploratory tool, a discovery tool, to introduce kids to the idea of printing things, I think this is outstanding. And I'm going to make another video about just some good examples of things you can do to use this to explore with children. These are videos for parents and teachers and grandparents who want to explore making things with kids. So look for those videos. Number three, as of right now, you can't get replacement parts for this on the Monoprice website. I expect you'll be able to because all their other printers have replacement parts. Perhaps they're just not available yet. Overall, I really recommend this printer. I like it a lot. I think there are two groups of people that will benefit from this. Number one, I'm very interested. I'm going to continue to explore printing miniatures, small models with a lot of detail with this printer using the standard 0.4 millimeter nozzle. Now, I'm sure you could put a smaller nozzle in this. It's a standard hot end. But I want to experiment with how good I can get a miniature using the standard nozzle. Number two, this is the printer I'd probably want to take over to my grandchildren's house with me. And I have grandchildren in multiple cities. I literally could put this in a suitcase. I could take it with me. We could have some fun. We could print some things. I think it's a great way to explore the possibilities of being a maker with kids. Well, folks, thanks for watching this. As I indicated, I do recommend this printer for families or for makers printing miniatures. If you're handy and you like assembling things, the Creality Ender line is also a wonderful line of printers. And we live in a wonderful time because there's just a lot of choices of options for you. Thanks for watching the video. If you found it useful, give me a thumbs up, recommend it to your friends, and leave me comments so we can continue to learn together.